Well, hello again, everyone. It's Bob Kiviat here for Conspiracy Truth Finders. And boy, do we have a show today that is real dear to me. I'm going to be introducing somebody that I would say is probably responsible for me entering into this world of social media broadcasting or streamcasting. And it's going to be so much fun to do the show with my friend today. We'll keep him a little mysterious for the moment. I don't know any other way to say this. There's a breaking news story today that crosses over into every area of my coverage of the UFO phenomena, conspiracy, whatever you want to call it. We have NBC News, online that is, reporting a story. I'm going to show you the shot of what this article looks like right now. Take a look at this. This is NBC News claiming in their online site that an Israeli expert in satellites. Now remember, we're talking about satellites because that's where UFOs would be coming from, theoretically, from space, where the satellites are. And he's claiming not only is there going to be, no doubt, proof that aliens are visiting the Earth, but there's a galactic federation of alien entities, if you will, that we're going to be joining if we ever get to the spiritual and or intellectual level, I guess, ready for such an event. And of course, Donald Trump, he knows about the aliens. And boy, that's a mouthful. So let's just kind of unpack this for a second. Breaking news today. An Israeli person that should know, let's face it, a satellite expert should know if indeed UFOs have been detected by satellites. Now, not for today's show, because we have a very special guest or two that I want to get to right away. But the most important issue is UFOs seen by satellites is an incredible story. And it goes back years ago to a gentleman who came out who worked in the satellite programs that we have here in the US. And he claimed that our satellites, many of them, are facing the other direction. In other words, they're not facing down on Earth, which is where the activity would be for satellites to be functioning for, us humans, but the satellites, many of them, are facing into deep space. And he claims, this expert, which maybe we'll get into some other day, is that these UFOs are coming in from deep space, many of them, and they're what's called fast walkers, which means it's a government kind of term for unknown craft coming in from God knows where to Earth, and they've been monitoring these fast walkers for a long time. So if the article is real or if the story is real, one has to wonder if there's some truth to the satellite expert knowing if UFOs are real. But whether or not UFOs represent a galactic federation of spacefaring beings that we're going to join, that reminds me of every kind of, crazy story you used to read about in the Weekly World News and all of that, supermarket tabloids and all that for years, which I had to kind of get through that period in life. So all I can say right now is there is a spokesperson from the Pentagon, Susan Goff, who I interviewed last year about the Pentagon UFO story. And I know Susan. So I'm going to check in with Susan. She did say she gave no comment in this article, but obviously NBC News knew enough to contact the right Pentagon expert. So as much as I want to laugh at the story a little bit, because I've been through this enough, there's a little glimmer of hope. There's some truth. Which leads us right into today's story, which is, I got to be honest with you, it's more than a story. In 2013, a UFO was seen by the Puerto Rico airport known as the Aguadilla airport. And it's a known airport to be involved with military. It's involved with our own Homeland Security. And in 2013, there was a UFO that apparently came out of the water at one point and created such a controversy among the UFO crowd that I was lucky enough to take on this case and investigate it with somebody that is, I believe, my alter ego in every way when it comes to separating fact from fiction. There was a show I did a few years ago. I worked with John Brenkus at Base Productions called Fact or Fake for Sci-Fi Channel. And Bill Day of Bill's channel has an amazing show called Real or Fake. And I've been on a bunch of times as a UFO kind of expert and friend of Bill's. But I convinced Bill to go do an investigation in Puerto Rico. And we did an investigation about this UFO that may have come out of the water, gone back in the water, and we don't know where it came from. And I'm going to introduce him right now, my very, very dear friend, Bill Day. Bill, how are you, man?
I'm doing good, Bob. It's good to see you. Thank you for having me on your new show. I'm really excited to see you out here after all this time. You know, I've been trying to get you more into the social media side of the world for a long time, and to see you here as well, it's a little bit of a victory for me.
Bill, it is. I hope I don't embarrass you as my coach. I'm going to do the best I can, but I would say without a doubt, and to any of Bill's, viewers that have known about me and watched me before, I say hello to all of you guys too. We all know how Bill is totally on top of things that could be real or fake. So what happened was I told Bill about this video. You may remember Bill very, well, I'm sure. I told you that apparently the Homeland Security Department, they had a plane up by the area of Aguadilla Airport, which is in the northern tip of Puerto Rico, and that the UFO was baffling all the experts. And it's a little UFO. It's not big. But what it does is really fascinating. So why don't we start by, Bill? What I'm going to do is, just to give the viewers a little bit of a taste of this entire thing and see the video, I did kind of a little, as you remember, a little kind of analysis, a little cursory analysis of my own. Why don't we play that now, just my little analysis of the video, and then we'll get right back into our story together, Bill. Let's see how this goes.
Hi, guys. Bob Kiviat here. Well, you guys may be aware that I just recently appeared on Bill's channel talking about the video you're seeing right now. It is a 2013 UFO video shot in Aguadilla, Puerto Rico, and it may very well be the most impressive UFO video I've ever seen captured by military or government cameras. What you're seeing right now is a UFO close-up shot by a FLIR camera that surveillance picked up over the airport, and they were very concerned. And you can see the dark object, and that dark object actually is the UFO in a thermal image. So you're seeing it basically at night. It's giving off heat, and that black area means it's basically very, very hot compared to the area around it. Now, it's nighttime. It's flying over the airport, over the nearby area. You're going to see it fly over cars, houses, through trees. It's really incredible. Now you're seeing it over the actual town, coming in literally toward the ocean. And it came out of the ocean, witnesses say, and it literally then went back into the ocean. Now, the scientific report that I've read over and over again since appearing on Bill's channel may very well be the most copious scientific report of a UFO I've ever seen. The UFO now is actually making its way over houses, over buildings, dangerous in every way. It's low, as you can see. You can see cars going by. It's making its way toward the ocean. It's going about 100 miles an hour, and it does not appear to have any, known propulsion. There is no wings. It's giving off heat, so clearly it's some kind of, heat-bearing object. But now, as it makes its way toward the ocean, take careful, observation now of how it gets into the ocean. It goes into the ocean and actually keeps going according to the FLIR readings. Here's a close-up before, actually it cuts to the close-up first. And as it goes into the ocean, it goes a little bit under. How deep, we don't know exactly. The scientific report will say, of course. And then as it comes out of the ocean, it seems to have split into two different UFOs or the same UFO is now split into two equal halves. And that's one of the most impressive parts of the UFO, that it appears to split like some sort of a cellular, living creature of some kind. And that's why one of the experts, Joshua Warren, he feels that it may well be some kind of organic UFO, some kind of natural UFO. But the FLIR operators are very concerned. Here it is now. It's been split into two. And I'll play the video in its entirety after my little report here is over. But it's critical everyone understand what's going on.
Okay, so I got that to you, Bill, and look, at some point I'm sure you had some doubt whether or not there was anything really to this and what we could make of it and all. But maybe, I don't know, Bill, if you remember, but I think what got me going was I determined from speaking to some of the experts that it did not slow down at all when it went into the water. There was no drag. There was no drag at all. Nothing caused it to slow down. So what was your feeling right away? What did you think when I first told you about this? What did you think?
Well, to give it some context, my show, a lot of it is sent in by viewers who come across something. They're not quite sure what it is. They want to know whether it's real or fake. So, I'm getting UFO videos. I'm getting ghost videos. I'm getting monster videos. I'm getting all sorts of stuff in. And so automatically, when you sent me this particular video clip, I was immediately going through my Rolodex of the usual answers, which is, well, this could be a bird. Birds have heat. They can be picked up by those cameras that they have in the Homeland Security airplanes. Or it could be something military. It could be a military drone. At that point, I wasn't too sure when it gets to the underwater part, what we were really looking at, whether it had this, physicality to it that it could actually just, go in the water, not make a splash, and continue at the speed it was reportedly going at. So, my Rolodex of answers I couldn't come up with anything that really fit this one, which made me, it would make me, disregard it. Put it on the heap with a lot of other fake UFO videos. But this
Right.
one, I couldn't answer. I couldn't quite get to it. So when you talked to me about going to Puerto Rico to investigate a little deeper, well, I was on board.
Okay, well, I remember that, you had come from a news background, which I loved, of course, because you were very similar to me. But I love the way you introduced it yourself on your channel. So now we're going to play the beginning, and we'll play a lot of our investigation we did together, Bill, because I think it's one of the most interesting ones I've ever been involved with. So let me play just the beginning of your little introduction to the investigation, okay? Here we go. Check out your little beginning, which I love the way
My
you
little
had.
beginning.
Loved it.
In addition to the object being picked up by radar, a nearby U.S. Customs and Border Protection plane with 4 crew members on board also spotted the object. Also on board was a thermal imaging camera. The camera's operator recorded the object for nearly 4 minutes as it flew at speeds up to 120 miles per hour through the air. It then dove into the ocean without making so much as a splash and continued underwater at speeds of up to 100 miles per hour. The object grew in size underwater and then split in two just before the video ends. Come and join me along with UFO expert Robert Kiviat as we head to Puerto Rico to conduct our own investigation to find out if this video and the UFO in it are real or fake.
And I love that shot, Bill, of the real or fake at the end, because to tell you the truth, that's me. Everything about my work has been, is it real or is it not? Is it true or is it not? I try to keep it like, one or the other. The middle road is something that a Navy expert told me years ago. The middle road is something called indeterminate. It's like, how painful would it be if everything ends with, on your channel, you call it not indeterminate. What do you call it on your channel?
Well, we call it unknown.
Unknown.
Yes, and it usually comes on with a rather sad sound because we hate unknowns.
And I do too. And every one of your viewers and everyone that I've ever done shows for, to me, it's very disappointing when you end up with, I don't know. What could it be? You know? So my goal always is to be a little bit believing, but Bill, you're not. You're more of the skeptic, right? So tell me your thinking about us. You think I'm a believer and you're a skeptic, right? So tell me how that plays into this investigation as we begin to get into the investigation. Tell me.
Well, I mean, by nature, I'm a skeptic. And then, of course, doing a show called Real or Fake with probably 300 episodes at this point, that will teach you to be a skeptic, because normally everything has got an answer of some type, you know, especially, you know, as soon as you scratch the surface on a lot of these things that are put out, you'll find these underlying realities that explain everything. And it's, you know, it's kind of ho-hum. And, you know, you're always looking for that magical one that will appear. And so, you know, a lot of times what I do is I present myself saying, you know I've done a lot of stories on megalodons, or I've done a lot of stories on UFOs, but I keep doing it because even though I'm a skeptic, I really hope to find one day, because that would have been an extraordinary moment. And I think it's something really to strive for. So in this particular case with this UFO, it had the earmarks of, well, I bet you if I get down there and we start scratching around, you know, we're going to find a lot of logical explanations for what's in this video. But on the other hand, I really want to go because there is that little chance that we really have a UFO here. So
okay, so
I was on board for it.
I love the way you set that up perfectly. So, and we did not rehearse that. So that was my feeling. You were going to be the guy going, well, show me if you can prove anything to me, great. But Bill, a little secret here. I'm a little more skeptical than you may think. I don't take everything, even that article that we talked about at the top of the show. I'm not one of those gullible people. But on the other hand, I do actually think it's important to have some belief level. So it's interesting how you set it up. Here's how our investigation began, Bill. As you know, I live in the LA area and you live in New Jersey. We had to meet up in New Jersey. So let's start the process.
We met up in Newark.
Everyone how we started the investigation. It's pretty funny how we started. Go ahead.
And, you know, the more I thought about it, the more I liked the idea, because, you know, I'm kind of a skeptic and he's kind of a believer. So it's bound to be interesting.
All right, well, we found Mr. Robert Kiviat. He's right here in the airport. Check this out.
Look at this guy.
How you doing, Bill?
Doing, man?
I'm here, man. Ready to take on some aliens and UFOs and whatever else we might see.
Now, apparently, Robert has a friend with him. I'm not quite sure what the relationship is. But assistant, girlfriend, I don't know, we're going to find out.
It's good to meet you.
Mike's arrived. Mike Rios.
How you
Hey,
doing?
Mike
Robert?
Rios, how you doing? Now, I don't know exactly how Mike fits into Robert's research here, but I do know he owns a water sports company, is into UFOs, and has agreed to help us out.
Okay, so there is Mike Rios. Now, Bill, as you know, we would never have been able to convince you collectively together, me and you together, convincing yourself to go to Puerto Rico if we didn't have the water angle covered, because the UFO came out of the ocean, right? So Mike was my find. Mike was the guy that I said, boy, if we could get a guy who could, you know, take us on the water and show us the area and knew about the depth of the ocean there and how deep the UFO would have had to go and all that stuff, he would be great.
Excellent.
So what did you think of Mike when you met him?
part.
What did you think of him?
Mike Rios, when we first met him?
Yeah.
Well, I entered the whole story because, as you might recall, you did most of the producing. I mean, you made the calls into Puerto Rico, you got things set up, and I just was sort of on the tech side, making sure that we're going to have camera gear, we're going to have sound, and my list of questions, basically. So when we ran into Mike Rio, I really didn't know who he was. I just figured that he was somebody who had his hands on a lot of information locally. And so, in the documentary business, which I've been in for a long time, go with the flow, shoot what's in front of your face and see where it goes.
Well, maybe you didn't hear what I said, but I may have spoke over you by accident there. I asked you what you think of Chantel, because let's face it, you thought she was my assistant, but she really was more than that. I mean, Chantel had been a very, very supportive girlfriend for a bunch of years. She helped me produce the show we did for Sci-Fi called Aliens on the Moon, The Truth Exposed, a few years ago. So she really was a little bit more knowledgeable than she indicated to you, because she was probably a little shy. But she was very helpful, and she did indeed help us with the production in every way. So I want to do my little shout out to Chantel. So she's an ex-girlfriend, but we are still friends. And so
she was great. She was great. And I love the way you just showed up with the airport, and that was the first time I heard of her.
Yeah,
that's the way I like to work. I mean, just like throw stuff at me. And we'll figure it out later. That was a surprise.
And by the way, I wasn't sure she was even coming, because one thing about this show, and Courtney, our producer, may start laughing more, but there's a personal aspect to this show for me. And getting involved in social media, thanks to you, Bill, it's my chance to tell more of my stories about what it was like to produce TV shows about these unexplained mysteries or conspiracies, if you will. So we'll be getting more into the personal stories about me in the future. But right now, my favorite story, of course, Bill, is the great job you did as a one-man crew. I want everyone to understand the rest of the show that we're showing today from Bill's great investigation with me. Bill was like cameraman, script supervisor, you name it. You name the function of a production, including pilot of drone, which we're going to get into the drone aspect of this investigation in a minute. But the drone work Bill did, I got to tell you, challenged me in every way, because I'll explain in a minute, but it was just
well, it was one of my better ones, because I didn't actually lose a drone on this shoot. Which
right. There was an almost moment. So anyway, we're going to get into it now. I have a surprise. The surprise is that we are waiting for Mike Rios, Mike himself.
You got Mike? You found Mike?
I got Mike. Found Mike.
Wow.
Haven't spoken to him in a while. He's still around, not doing the stuff in Puerto Rico right now, but he plans to go back shortly and continue
the work
he does there.
Yeah.
But we're waiting for Mike to check in with us, so we hope we see him. But in the meantime,
I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah. So we're going to play a little bit more of the show. When we got to investigate outright, we heard there was possibly, and again, it was a maybe, that there was a submarine base. Mike mentioned to us there might be one. So we wanted to know. So here's us trying to get into the submarine base aspect. In other words, if a UFO is coming to investigate something in this area, maybe there was a reason. So
can I say something about this first before you show the clip?
Sure, go ahead.
This is classic. I mean, when you go out in the field and you're doing these investigative documentaries, before we went there, we didn't hear anything, or at least I didn't hear anything about a secret submarine base, right? So I think it was in our first meeting, Mike Rios just, announces this out of the blue. Well, there's a secret submarine base, and I'm like, oh, here we go. All right. Really? Show me. So that's where the clip hopefully starts.
In a way, I think it's pretty close to that. But here is that next section of our investigation.
This is Albert. He's our captain for today. His boat has got a depth finder on it, so that's going to help aid us in trying to find the right area, since a lot of people say it's in an area of about 300 feet of water. And right now, I think we're at like 180. ¿Cuánto es ahora? 107. Okay, so we're at 160 right now, so, and it's getting deeper fast, so that means we might be getting close to the location, or the information is bad. And I'm thinking the information is bad, but Roberto is more happy with what's happening, aren't you?
Well, it's close enough, though. I think what we're looking at here is that whatever the UFO was doing, it was going to a deeper part of the ocean that I think most people would expect a UFO to dive into. So there clearly was something going on. Why was it going to that location, and why did it come out of that location? You know, the trench, they say, is 30,000 feet deep, only 20, 30, 40 miles from here. And they say it's one of the deepest parts of the ocean anywhere. And we are in the Bermuda Triangle. People need to understand that. We are in an area where boats have vanished, planes have vanished, right where we are right now. So it's not like a fantasy. This is a real deal here. This is one of the scariest parts of any ocean in the world. And why was a UFO interested in this area?
So you noticed right away, Bill, that, we did something that most productions never even do. They don't ever try to get to the location, literally, of a UFO encounter, even if it's in the ocean, as difficult as that is. And we were like on the site. That guy, remember, Bill? That guy, that captain, was using a depth finder using our map to find out where to go, where the UFO went. What'd you think of all that?
Well, what was interesting about that is surrounding this little excursion that we did is there are these large, very large antennas that you see scattered around the area coming out of the hills near this area. And when you inquire about those, they all have to do with submarine communications, a very low frequency communication they use for submarines. So it did lead some credence to, well, maybe there is something down there. Now, as I recall, they did have the map coordinates of where it was generally believed to be, but we didn't have a budget where we could get a remote operated vehicle underwater. So we came up with our own kind of solution to that problem. And remember that one, Bob?
Yeah, I almost included the shot of Bill creatively figuring out how to drop a GoPro camera down into the ocean to the bottom and get it as far down as he could and then get it back up again. Since we didn't kind of get any important image, I didn't want to create a kind of indeterminate moment where, it's like, oh no, what does it mean? Neutral. We didn't have any answer.
Yeah.
But
that spot, it turned out there were no depths around there of 300 feet.
Yeah.
I think the deepest we got was 170, 180.
Right.
So we got the camera down and, the answer is we didn't find a submarine base down there or anywhere in the area. So I started keeping score. You remember that?
Yeah. So because we couldn't include everything today, Bill basically was telling me in the show, and it's on Bill's channel. Everyone can watch it on Bill's channel. It's like, Bob, you're striking out. First you think there's going to be a UFO. All right, well, we saw that on video, but then maybe there'll be a submarine base we discovered. Not really. However, there was something that we heard about from people in Puerto Rico, and they were talking about this blimp. Now, they said there's a secret blimp. And we were like, what do you mean? And so Mike Rios told us, our water expert, he said, no, there is. This is blimp, So Bill figured out a way. I guess he was already thinking about how could he investigate something if we're on the boat and we have to kind of like investigate something on the land, but we can't get there. And I knew Bill was like an expert in drone aerial photography. He's done some really great work with that. So I was praying that Bill would be able to fly his drone. Well, he did. So what we're going to do is we're going to show our drone investigation of the secret blimp section now, Bill, even though we didn't show the GoPro, which it was great, but can't show it all.
But check out the investigation of the blimp, done by mainly Bill Day. Check it out.
My drone.
By drone.
I have to admit, it was pretty strange. It kind of popped out of the jungle and it looked very strange over there. And the rumor on this one is that underneath this blimp is the local Area 51, some kind of secret base where all sorts of mysterious activities going on. To get a better look, we dropped the anchor and launched the drone for a bird's eye view. The facility actually looked pretty simple. It just had the blimp and a few buildings, but not much else. Later, I took a few pictures and posted them to Facebook to see what my super sleuths could find.
Now, I've got to tell everybody, which I didn't include because it's probably impossible to include, Bill flies the drone in, and it seems to be doing its job. But we don't know because Bill's the only one seeing what's going on there. And then the drone is on its way back to the boat, but it's running out of power. And according to Bill, it may not get back in the boat. And according to Bill, he's telling everyone on the boat, if it comes in hot or it comes in out of control, watch out because it's got the rotors going. It might cut your hand off. I don't know. So I wasn't quite sure what to do. So as the drone is coming back into the boat, Bill's got it kind of hovering, and then it kind of drops in the boat. Now, Bill, you told me, and you've repeated it often to me, that was all the actual moment of reality, that had like, what, 1 second left of power, or it's going to be in the ocean? Seemed like too good to be true. Tell me exactly what happened there. Tell me.
Well, the thing about drones is there's a million mistakes you can make. And the mistake I made that day was I flew the drone out to about half of its battery, right? I'm watching the battery level saying, I can't go further than half because, I got to get that drone back. Now, that blimp was pretty far out there and I got to about 50% turn it around. But the mistake I made was I didn't calculate for the fact that we were upwind from the blimp. And so the drone was going to have to work a lot harder getting home, which means it didn't really have enough power. And it literally ran out of battery as it was hovering onto the boat and then kind of crash landed onto the deck. And I considered that a good day because
it was unbelievable. In fact, everybody on the boat was making comments about me afterwards because they saw me scrambling. And what I was actually scrambling to do, and Chantel was kind of laughing, because I was worried about my wallet and my cell phone. And I'm wondering, how am I going to get my wallet and my cell phone, out of my pockets or wherever they were, and I was going to jump in the water because I was getting out. I thought this out of control drone.
Yeah, I remember you scrambling.
I didn't. Anyway, it was an amazing thing. But Bill brought up a really great point in the investigation. And that's why I love doing these type of things with Bill, because he brought up the secret base might be like an Area 51. And, look, I don't know what people think about Area 51, the secret Nevada base or whatever. I couldn't imagine there was an actual base, submarine base. Maybe this is what they were talking about by a submarine base. And there was maybe even an underground, labyrinth underneath. But let me play the next section, Bill. It's when we're analyzing the alleged Area 51, under the blimp,
What we found out.
Check it out.
To me, what is that? It's a diagram of what they believe, the UFO believers in Puerto Rico, or what's going on underneath the blimp. Not a sub base, an actual, subterranean world. Now look, do we have any proof of that? No. But what is the reason they believe this? I want to commend the Facebook researchers that have jumped into this because it's good work. It's a beginning. It's how you kind of unwrap the onion. What does the military say? Okay, what kind of spokespeople do they have? They have a very nice guy in khakis with a nice little beanie. He looks great and wonderful. Wikipedia, great. What about the deeper mystery? I just want to kind of challenge the researchers that dig a lot deeper, more like an X-File, more like, Mulder from the X-File might dig. He would not just take, the surfacey material. He'd dig deeper. So I'm gonna be digging, and I hope they will be too.
Now, I want to give Bill even more credit because I couldn't include everything and have a good conversation with Bill. Well,
Thank
I was
you.
going to straight up,
You're skipping
replaying
over a
of our
little
show.
bit there.
What was that?
I see you skipping over a little bit there.
Yeah, but I'm going to repeat what came in. One of
Okay.
Bill's,
All right.
one of your people.
I thought you were going back to your old ways, like, trying to convince people that really was Area 51.
You see, Bill's accusing me right now of editing creatively here.
Yeah, a little slanted there, Bob. A little slanted.
Well, hold on. He
Yeah.
isn't wrong. There was a Facebook person, somebody that Bill had ran this by through his, well, tell us who it was, Bill. Somebody gave us information.
Well, it has to do with how the show works. I get mountains of material in. I'm basically a one-man band. I have no staff whatsoever. So luckily what I have is a group on Facebook that like to dig into things. They like to do research. They like to get to the bottom of it. So we call them the super sleuths of the show.
I love them. Love them.
Yeah, so they're always there, and they're always changing everything. But some amazing people what they can come up with. And while they took a look at this thing and they went out and they did their thing, and it came back that it was a radar blimp. Basically, what they do is they take that blimp and they can hoist it up 10,000 feet, and they've got a radar device on it, and Homeland Security uses it.
It's great.
Homeland Security, let me just finish. Homeland Security, this is a drug running area, and a lot of what Homeland Security does there is they look for drug runners. And so this blimp, I forget the model and the name of it right now, but it was in use for those kind of things, which makes sense because if you had an Area 51, you wouldn't be putting your secret blimps out where my drone can basically fly over them. You know what I mean?
I agree. And so what I was going to say was, and I was trying to say, didn't mean to cut you off there. I love the ability to knock out a piece of evidence. One of Bill's contacts through his show was able to say they determined what kind of blimp this was. So I said, great. Let's move on to the next part of the show, which was what have the experts said about the UFO video?
But before we get there,
that was not much
before we do that. Okay.
Yeah, we could not do much about
what was the score at this point?
Bill had me at like 0-3 right now. I think I had struck out. Like if
I think it was 0-3, but these are two. The last two you saw were definitely two that were.
Bill had me he was being kind. It was like 2 strikes now. Okay. Now there was a part of the video which I could have shown from our previous show, which on Bill's channel, which had Bill basically saying, more or less paraphrasing, this one better be good because you're 0-2 so far. You might be 0-3 soon. 0-3 or strike 3 would have been an interview that I had arranged with an FAA federal, the FAA controls almost all the aviation issues, as you know, Bill, around the country and on the East Coast. I was able to find the guy who was in the tower at Aguadilla Airport in charge that day. However, when the UFO happened, the UFO video was filmed, but he was not working that night. He was not in his tower where he normally would be at night. He was at home, but he heard about the UFO sighting and he was aware of it. So I convinced him to do the interview, and I was all excited. I took Bill, I took Chantel, Bill's got his camera, we're going to go do the interview, we're waiting for the moment we got to show up at the tower. Let's play that moment for me. Was it strike 3 or not? Let's find out.
Okay, yeah, I'm not allowed to do the interview because of the title that I hold in the facility.
We heard him on camera, on audio, telling us himself. I can't give you his name, but he got denied today, officially denied, because of the sensitive nature of the story.
Now, Bill, as you remember, it was scheduled. This was a scheduled interview. We were just fitting in a little lunchtime before we're going to go to the tower. What did you think of that? By the way, before you answer, not the first time a government person has pulled out of an interview with my crew when I had my crews for Fox or NBC Universal. Just like that. Seems to happen a lot. What do you think, Bill?
Well, when you hit a situation like that, that immediately sends my antenna up, because why is the interview being canceled? Who found out about it, and what is there to hide if, nothing important happened? So in this particular case, that really got me curious. And I think there was a crack in my skepticism at this point that Bob was actually onto something, because we were starting to get somewhere to where people were starting to feel it. And, we had to just hold tight and see where it led.
So in other words, even though I struck out completely, because I did not get the interview. And in our business, it's called the get. You got to get the interview or you don't get the interview. And it wasn't a get for me. And I felt really bad about that. So I had one last arrow in my quiver. I had one last one, which was Rich Hoffman is a top UFO expert. He had enlisted a team of scientists to study this UFO video. It is probably the most important investigation document I've ever seen in UFO research. I had a document. You knew I had it. I was trying to get Rich to give us an interview. Finally, he agreed to give us an interview. Only it was at the end of our trip. It was late at night. Let me play the interview. Bill shot it. Let's just see how it goes, and we'll talk right after on the other side, okay?
In the end, I have to give Bob an A for effort, but truth be told, he didn't come up with a single eyewitness interview. The best he could do was a phone interview with one of the authors of this, a 167-page report that covers the entire episode. His name is Richard Hoffman, an information technology expert who has been investigating UFOs for more than 25 years and is well aware that the most important question here is very simple. Is it real or is it fake?
This is one of the things that we addressed right up front, because we said this could be fake, it could be, it could be anything like that. Is it fake? I mean, is it real? Okay, well, you look at the display and you see that there's a time and all that wonderful information that about the video and the location, the GPS coordinates, and everything else. Okay, so then when we got the FAA radar data, we said, oh, look, there's a plane that's in the air at this location at that time. So we were able to match up a plane. And then we looked at what the code was for that aircraft. And it turns out we were able to identify that the codes are for military and this Homeland security.
So what Jim Hoffman's team came up with, you remember, Bill, and it's in the paper, is that the object was something in the neighborhood of like a Volkswagen kind of thing, maybe a smaller even, could have been smaller than a Volkswagen, small, Beetle. It had properties that they've never been able to determine. That, in other words, what could fly 110 miles an hour through the air, then go into the water, and ignore the resistance of the water and not change its trajectory, number one, did not change its path, and it did not change its speed, which is pretty amazing, because if it goes in the water, it's going to slow down. Submarines, as you know, Bill, submarines have a hard time fighting against drag of the water. So what allowed this thing to not only keep its speed, but then split into two? So tell me what you thought of all that, Bill, because I know you're a skeptic. I get it. So tell me.
Well, I think there was one other gentleman. I mean, you lost the interview with the guy in the tower who witnessed it. And then there was another gentleman. We didn't show a clip. He wouldn't talk on camera either. And so I was just getting more and more intrigued.
There's a reason why I didn't include the Pepe. There was a museum, and a guy named Pepe and another guy who ran the museum, they allowed us to come into the museum by Aguadilla Airport. It's like a museum, an aerial museum, and an aviation museum.
Right.
And there was a guy who claimed he had heard information and he knew, but Bill, I know you're a skeptic, so I didn't want to bring up another guy you're going to shoot down as not very credible.
No, but it wasn't. At this point, it's not like, a secret military base that doesn't exist. These are people that are slamming the door in our faces. And so it's not really a loss. I mean, it's like there's something here, right? I wasn't, admitting it to you at that point because we were on opposite sides of the fence, basically.
Of course.
But I was getting sucked into it. And then what Richard Hoffman said, just to go over the clip a little bit, when he's showing you those diagrams on the map, what they were able to do is line up the sighting from the tower with the sighting from the airplane. And if you put those on a grid on top of each other, they match up. So in our business, that's confirmation that that information is probably true about the object, where it was, what time, and where it went. So it left us with some really, really solid information of this object actually existing. So what this all points to is the fact that there was something there. We had good leads now. I mean, good, solid information. And what it really did was set up the next leg of the investigation. We knew we had something. We knew we had some real recorded evidence. So the next step would have to be the guy who recorded that footage from the plane. So here's the situation we're in. We know somebody recorded it, but who shot it and who released it? It wasn't the military. It wasn't an official release. So somebody leaked it, and that's where we needed to go. And I was very intrigued at that point.
And as you know, you then gave me the assignment to track that down, which I did. And what occurred was this, Bill, and I love the fact you brought it full circle. That's what is most important in a UFO video case. Whether it's a UFO video case, whether it's the election that a president doesn't want to admit he lost. I've been into that area, by the way, on the show, Bill. The reality is that you still need evidence. So the evidence trail in this video leads to who released it, where did it come from. First of all, it was shot by Homeland Security. That individual plane, we now know from the work Rich Hoffman did, what plane it was, where it came, what it was doing there. It was monitoring the airport for any kind of activity Homeland Security is worried about. They noticed it. They shot it. It was not released by them. Somebody in the Homeland Security Department took a thumb drive, put it into a computer, and made a copy. We tracked down the person that did that to Florida. Florida is where the original thumb drive copy appeared. It was given to a UFO researcher. That UFO researcher and I started talking when I got back from Puerto Rico. And up until last year, so that would be 2 years later, he was still trying to convince the guy who worked for the government who he didn't release it. He kind of stole it and gave it to someone. When I say stole it, there's a provenance here. I mean, that video is owned by the United States government and us, I guess, but you still have to kind of ask for permission to make a copy. give it to a journalist like me or you, Bill. There has to be a chain of evidence here. So we're left with a person in the government getting a copy surreptitiously, giving it to somebody, wink, wink, passing it over, and we can't get back to the guy himself to tell us about the pilot, because obviously we want the pilot. Now, the rumors are, Bill, you might be hearing it first today, that one of the pilots might have been the one to let the video get out somehow. What do you think of that? That somebody in Homeland Security might have actually got it right from the pilot, and they kind of not conspired in the conspiracy show we have here, Truth Finder Conspiracies, no. But tell me, what do you think, Bill?
Well, I mean, obviously somebody leaked it, and correct me if I'm wrong, but once it was out, Homeland Security then verified the footage came from one of their planes.
There's no doubt
about that.
Nobody is denying that it was shot that night by Homeland Security. And the main thing we don't yet have, which you're so right about, and I feel I didn't come through, is talking to the guy who was shooting the video. Because the guy who's shooting the video was so intrigued by what he was seeing that he stayed on it, and he apparently shifted to a different optics to zoom in right about the time the thing split into the two. So there's a lot of evidence here that you wish you knew what he was thinking when he was shooting it. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. Well, the thing is, which I've always questioned, is they were out on a normal patrol, basically a drug patrol at night. They pick up this thing. They change their routine to follow it. And I don't know why that you would have this object on camera. It would go into the water. It would split in two. It would do all this weird stuff. And then they break off and go back to their regular, programmed course for the evening. And that is one thing I have not been able to answer. And this is one of the reasons why I think it's really important we get to the pilot and the guy running the recorder. These are two separate people to find out what were those decisions, who made those decisions, and why did you do that? Did you get a call to get off this, or was this just something you were running out of gas or something? I got to know. I want to know what happened there.
Bill, your way of looking at this, I love the other side of it, how you see things, and everything you said was spot on. And not only do I believe what you're saying is so true, I was hoping to go back to Puerto Rico for many reasons. I like Mike. We didn't get to see Mike today. We'll bring him on a different show, but I want to go back. And 1 month later, that awful hurricane hit Puerto Rico. And it wiped out, as you know, Bill, our friends we had met. What do you make of the timing of this, Bill? The hurricane.
Well, I mean, I think it's an unfortunate coincidence that, a hurricane would come right in the middle of that investigation and basically wipe out all your concrete evidence. And, bases were wiped out, planes were wiped out, communications were wiped out. That's just the way it goes. You gotta hang in there, and you gotta wait, and then hopefully something will pop up and you'll be back on the course.
And now, Bill, I've encouraged you, as we conclude today, I've encouraged you to think about doing a full series someday with me, where we go out like the believer and the skeptic. It's an old, kind of package, but it works. The believer and the skeptic go out to like the top 100 UFO video locations. In other words, where these UFOs were shot, and deconstruct it, just like we did with Aguadilla. And I'm still hoping, Bill, that something we kind of germinated will grow. And I want to remind you, this case falls into the very unique category of UFO/USO, unidentified submersible object. Now, are you aware of the entire history of USOs as opposed to UFOs?
No, I don't know much about the USO world. I heard that Hillary Clinton was involved in it. Maybe you know more about that than I do.
I don't know about that, Bill, but I want to tell people about one short thing. It was an event that occurred years ago along the coast of the United States. It might be the most impressive government documented UFO sighting, although it's not a UFO sighting as much as an underwater craft that was monitored until it went out of the ocean and out into space. And it's a case that I'm going to try to come back to because of our investigation in Aguadilla. Even though the object was small, people have to remember it's a small object, so maybe it's some kind of a secret government drone of some kind that can go out of the water, in the water, defy the resistance of the water. I don't know. And one thing I've always tried to convince Bill of, and I really believe this, is that just like we went to Aguadilla to investigate this UFO case, I think there's a TV series in the offing in the future where Bill, the skeptic, and me, the believer, go to like all the greatest sites where UFO videos have been shot and kind of deconstruct it by meeting the people, the witnesses, do the investigation, get a feeling for the locale, and a little bit of a travel-like show, you know? So I'm hoping that this will inspire that, Bill. So here's the big question, though. When we did our episode on your channel, how did your viewers vote? What did they think? Real? Fake? What was it?
Well, there's two components of it. The audience gets to vote, and then I present what I consider to be the official answer. Now, on this particular case, I don't remember the exact numbers, but the majority had voted fake on it. Really? And then I revealed that I gave it the official answer as real. And the reasoning was, yes, there is a UFO recorded on Homeland Security cameras. It's an unidentified flying object. We don't know if it's aliens. We don't know if it's military. We don't know if it's a bird, but it is an unidentified flying object. So it ended up real. And it even kind of created kind of a mini drama in my family. I think it was Thanksgiving, like right after, I concluded that. They're all saying, you gave that thing a real? You're not like getting into that stuff, are you? And I go, no. I mean, think about it. It is real. There's something happened there.
I love that, Bill. And I love the way you concluded today because that's all I ever hoped for. Things that I look into, and now that you've joined me in some of these escapades, we're trying to get to the truth. As long as we know it's a real UFO video shot by Homeland Security, it gives us a lot of comfort that there's something to maybe this mystery, for me anyway. And I can't wait to get onto more cases with you, Bill. I'm looking forward to it. I can't thank you enough for being on the show. Can't wait to get
Bob,
you back on
pleasure.
somehow, Bill. I really mean it. It's a pleasure to have you.
Yeah, and I'm just sorry, you didn't get onto the scoreboard in that video faster, but there's hope next time, and I fully expect we're going to be out somewhere looking at something.
But I did score something. I did score at least it's a real UFO. It got past your skeptics on your channel calling it a fake UFO. So I get a little mini victory. Small.
Yes, you do. You do, Bob.
Well, on that note,
this is for Bob.
I'll see you soon, and I'll see everyone else here back on Conspiracy Truth Finders with me, Bob Kiviat, in our next episode. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you soon.